Wuthering Heights, the story, part 2. Part 1 is already available on the channel Offbeat Gyan, and you can watch it and understand and then return to watch part 2. So, I'm Deepa and this is Offbeat Gyan. And now, let me tell you the story, the second part of the story of Emily Bronte's great classic, Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff leaves Wuthering Heights after hearing Catherine Earnshaw's statement that it would degrade her to marry him. Catherine Earnshaw is telling Mrs. Dean about her reasons for rejecting Heathcliff and accepting the proposal of Edgar Linton, who lives at Thrushcross Grange. On hearing this, without telling anyone, Heathcliff disappears from Wuthering Heights, and he is missing for 3 years. In the interim, Catherine gets married to Edgar Linton, and she moves to Thrushcross Grange. Ellen Dean accompanies her mistress to Thrushcross Grange. 5 months after Catherine Earnshaw gets married to Edgar Linton, Heathcliff returns, and he visits Thrushcross Grange. On meeting him again, the feelings rise again to the surface. Catherine reveals the intensity of her deep feelings for him. If you remember, I had explained in the earlier presentation that Catherine compares her love for Heathcliff as an essential life force, and she says that her attraction or her relationship with Edgar Linton is like that of the seasons which keep on changing. So, her relationship with Heathcliff is something elemental. There is something unworldly and passionate about it, and he is an essential life force for Catherine Earnshaw. So, when they meet again, these feelings rise to the surface, and she openly states to him, to Heathcliff, that she still loves him and she still yearns for his presence in her life. Heathcliff has returned a very rich man, and his appearance and clothes have changed. In the first part of the novel, we find people making fun of him, treating him as an orphan, a waif, and his language, his appearance, everything is criticized by everyone, including Catherine, who considers it to be degrading to continue further in her relationship with Heathcliff. But Heathcliff has come back a changed man. He has become very sophisticated and rich, and his wildness seems to be just under the surface. He has come back with the purpose of taking revenge on Hindley Earnshaw. And Hindley is already a very disturbed man after the death of his beloved wife, Frances. So Heathcliff hastens Hindley's downfall. Hindley used to drink and he used to be a violent man. Now his alcoholism is encouraged by the vengeful Heathcliff. Heathcliff's love for Catherine Earnshaw is undiminished, and his hatred for Hindley makes him fiendish. Edgar's sister, Isabella, falls in love with the elemental Heathcliff. When she sees him, she finds that there is something wild and unnatural about him, and even if he is not the conventionally handsome Englishman, there is something about him that attracts women, and Isabella falls in love with him. Catherine advises her that Heathcliff is not a suitable match for her, but she ignores the advice and she runs away with Heathcliff. They get married, but their life is very difficult, especially for Isabella, because he is very harsh and brutal towards her. He is consumed with love for Catherine. His life is for Catherine, and he has married Isabella only because he wants to take revenge on the Lintons and Hindley Earnshaw. So, the driving force of his life is revenge and rage. And he cares only for one person, and that is Catherine Earnshaw, who is lost to him. He hates Hindley and he drives him deeper and deeper into misery and loss. They play card games, and Hindley loses all his property, including Wuthering Heights and everything else, to Heathcliff. Heathcliff comes to meet Catherine one day at Thrushcross Grange when Edgar is away at church. At this point of time, Catherine Earnshaw is pregnant with Edgar Linton's child, and she is not a healthy, happy pregnant woman. Pregnancy seems to have made her weaker, and she appears to have lost all her passion, her active nature, and she seems dull and lifeless. But there is a certain loveliness about her form which is described by Ellen Dean to Lockwood. So one day Edgar is away at church, and Heathcliff comes to Thrushcross Grange, and he comes to Catherine Earnshaw's bedroom, and Ellen Dean is there, and she describes their passionate meeting with each other. They cling to each other in desperation, and Heathcliff, when he sees Catherine, he cannot control his emotions. It seems to Ellen that both of them are crying their hearts out. And Catherine does not look very healthy. She looks like she is on the brink of death. And Catherine, when she sees Heathcliff, she says, "How many years do you mean to live after I am gone?" On hearing these words, Heathcliff is broken and he feels very sad. He feels grief stricken. Catherine continues, "I wish I could hold you till we were both dead. I shouldn't care what you suffered. I care nothing for your sufferings. Why shouldn't you suffer? I do. Will you forget me? Will you be happy when I am in the earth? Will you say, 20 years hence, that is the grave of Catherine Earnshaw? I loved her long ago." They are tormented lovers, and Catherine tells Heathcliff that he has never ever hurt her. Catherine pleads with him to forgive her. At this point of time, Edgar comes back from church, and Ellen Dean warns Heathcliff and Catherine that Edgar will soon enter the house. But Catherine clings to Heathcliff's hands. She does not allow him to go, and she tells him that she will be dying soon. So Edgar, he enters the house and he enters the room, and on seeing Heathcliff, he is outraged. But at that moment, Heathcliff compels him to look at the lifeless Catherine who has fainted. Heathcliff is deeply anguished at the turn of events, and he leaves Thrushcross Grange only when Ellen promises him that she will update him on what is happening at Thrushcross Grange. That night, 2 hours after the birth of her 7-month-old baby, Catherine died. She gives birth to a baby girl, and the child is called Cathy, and Cathy is very close to her father, Edgar Linton. As the novel progresses, we find that Cathy is deeply devoted to her father, Edgar Linton. Edgar was grief stricken. Another tragedy was that Edgar's father, the elder Mr. Linton, had given his entire estate to his daughter Isabella, who was married to Heathcliff. Ellen informs Heathcliff about Catherine's death, and his grief is frightening to see. Ellen describes his words and his state of mind to Lockwood. Heathcliff's grief was wild, and he raves, "Catherine Earnshaw, may you not rest as long as I am living. You said I killed you. Haunt me then. Be with me always. Take any form. Drive me mad. Only do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you." Raving and ranting against a cruel fate that has taken Catherine away from him, he is half mad. Heathcliff becomes even more cruel, even more fiendish and brutal. Catherine's burial takes place. She is buried in a peaceful green corner of the graveyard, and neither Heathcliff nor Hindley attend the ceremony. Only Edgar Linton and a couple of servants are present for the burial. Some time later, a very disturbed and visibly desperate Isabella returns to Thrushcross Grange, and she tells Ellen Dean about Heathcliff's cruelty towards her. She soon leaves Thrushcross Grange and goes away, and she has a child, the sick and weakly Linton. When Isabella dies, Heathcliff reclaims his son and brings him to Wuthering Heights. He is peevish and always whining, and he is a disappointment to the strong, sombre, lusty Heathcliff. Heathcliff then tricks Cathy Linton, and by this time Cathy has become older. She's a teenager, and he tricks Cathy Linton, and she is imprisoned at Wuthering Heights along with Linton. Heathcliff's planning is very devious. He gets them married off. Linton, his son, is married off to Cathy Linton. The boy is Linton Heathcliff, and he is married to Cathy Linton, and she takes the name Catherine Heathcliff. Soon Hindley dies, and Edgar also passes away. After that, the sickly Linton Heathcliff also dies, and the entire property of Thrushcross Grange and Wuthering Heights now belongs to Heathcliff. Heathcliff keeps the young and unhappy Catherine at Wuthering Heights, and Hindley's son, Hareton, is also a victim of Heathcliff's revenge. Heathcliff prevents Hareton from getting an education. He treats Hareton in the same way as he was treated by Hindley. Hindley had deprived him of an education. Hindley had treated him like a servant, and Heathcliff does the same to Hareton. But at the same time, there is a redeeming factor about Heathcliff because he is much more kinder to Hareton than Hindley had been to him. Gradually, as time passes, Heathcliff's desire for revenge is reduced, and his desire to be reunited with his eternal love, Catherine Earnshaw, increases. Soon he dies. For 4 days he does not eat anything. Probably it was the raging sickness within him. He stops eating, and once in a while he comes out of his room and he calls Ellen and he sits near her. He talks to her, but then he disappears for hours together inside his room. One day, when he doesn't appear, Ellen becomes worried and she walks out of the Wuthering Heights farmhouse and she looks up towards his bedroom and she finds that the window is open. And throughout the night, it had been raining. So she rushes inside and she takes the key to his room and she opens it. And she finds that he is lying on the bed. He's completely drenched. The rain had driven into the room through the open window, and he is dead. His eyes are open, and she tries to close his eyes, but his eyes don't close, and there is a strange look of exultation, of joy on his face. Heathcliff, one of the greatest fictional heroes, may come across as pure evil, but he has actually never done anything evil. He has only responded to what was done to him. Catherine Earnshaw is an elemental force in this novel. She is the driving force in the first part of the novel. Her wild and uncontrollable nature finds a similar wavelength in Heathcliff. Heathcliff's body is discovered by Ellen, as I told you earlier, and he is lying on the bed. His body is completely drenched, and Ellen tries to close his open eyes, but she can't close them. And Heathcliff is then buried, and life at Wuthering Heights gradually returns to normalcy. But there are ghostly visions of Heathcliff and a woman wandering on the moors. Ellen tells Mr. Lockwood that once a boy she saw a boy on the moor, and this little boy, he was probably a shepherd, and he was numb with fear, and he was sitting and crying. And she goes and asks him what happened, and the boy tells her that he had seen Heathcliff and a woman walking on the moors. Joseph, the servant, the servant who keeps on reading the Bible, he also tells Ellen that he had seen Heathcliff and a woman peering into the Wuthering Heights farmhouse through the window. So, that apart, the ghostly visions apart, life at Wuthering Heights gradually returns to normalcy. There is the slow and gradual development of love between Hareton and Cathy Linton. Cathy starts teaching Hareton, and it is a mature relationship after the torment and suffering that was endured by both the young people. Soon they get married and settle down at Thrushcross Grange. Now, this is just all the characters in Wuthering Heights. Francis Earnshaw, who is married to Hindley Earnshaw, Hindley Earnshaw and his sister, Catherine Earnshaw, the orphan Heathcliff, Heathcliff, who has this otherworldly bond with Catherine Earnshaw. Then there is Edgar Linton and his sister Isabella Linton. Catherine Earnshaw marries Edgar Linton. Isabella Linton marries Heathcliff. Catherine Linton or Cathy Linton is the daughter of Catherine Earnshaw and Edgar Linton. Linton Heathcliff is the son of Heathcliff and Isabella Linton. Hareton Earnshaw is the son of Henley Earnshaw and Francis Earnshaw. And then we have the two narrators, Lockwood and Nellie Dean. Lockwood is the narrator in the first two chapters, and Nellie Dean is the one who tells the story of the families at Wuthering Heights farmhouse and Thrushcross Grange. She tells the story to Lockwood. So with this, I come to the end of my video on Wuthering Heights, the story part 2. Thank you. See you again next week with another video.